Now, I would like for us to give our guest from Los Angeles a very warm Denver welcome. Please help us welcome Candace.
Hi, everyone. My name is Candace Moore. I'm an alcoholic. And thank you so much, Patrick, for the invitation to come and participate, and for just a solid Step 6 talk. I appreciate the kindness that I've been shown, the enthusiasm of your group, and it's a privilege to be here, a privilege to be sober. Do you understand what I mean? Not just to be sober, but to not be drunk. And the power of that. Because when I'm drunk, I'm an entirely different person. My life looks different. The effect I have on you is different. And so it's not just being sober, but it's also not being drunk. And that's going to be important because as we stay here initially and we continue to go through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, right, there are going to be times that I have to be able to identify drunk behavior, sober. Right? There are people who love Alcoholics Anonymous. They give a great talk, and then they're drunk. So what's going on? What happened? And what I have found is it's not what I'm telling you, it's what I'm not telling you. It's what I'm holding on to. Because how is it we can come tonight, there's so much enthusiasm and love and light, and then leave this, right? And so I have to be able to identify as I continue going deeper into this process what a sober drink looks like today. Because when people go out, it's not about what they used to do. It's the behavior that we're not talking about, that we're defending, that we're protecting. Alcoholism is ruthless. It does not want us to be here sharing in this transformative experience. And so I'm grateful. I am grieving right now. I'm grieving the loss of several things. And I am at Lumber Baron. I keep wanting to call it Lumberjacks, but I know that's not it. I am at Lumber Baron, and it's a bed and breakfast. And so the funny thing is, I'm going to share it. So the funny thing is, you get invited, and then like a few months before your actual commitment, the arrangements are made, and they're like, oh, we're going to put you here, and all the speakers stay, and they really love it. And they're like, it's a bed and breakfast. I was like, oh, right? And so but I'm not going to say, oh, I don't like Airbnbs, I don't like bread and breakfast, I don't like any of that. I like impersonal, sterile hotels where you don't know me and I don't know you and I don't have to say good morning if I don't want to. And but what I say is, oh, great, right? And so, because we're taught well, and so I come in, I'm on very little sleep. I told you I'm grieving, there's a lot of stuff going on. We'll talk about it later because I've got a few minutes, right? And so I meet Joel, I meet his wife, and my amazing host, Jen, picked me up. And so, and the other thing is my level on 3 hours sleep was like at a 4, and Jen was at a 10. You know what I mean? And so then I had to adjust and bring it up to like a good 7. I gave her a good 7. So I go in, and there's like more people who want to chit chat. I'm like, oh my God. And then, but remember, this whole time, it's like this bed and breakfast. I told myself, no one told me this. I didn't go online and research, I haven't read, I have facts. And so I told myself it's gonna be like some shared bathroom situation. And I was just like, it's only one night, you can get through it. Suck it up for Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And so, but I'm tired, and there's so much stuff. I was just like, I had to ask, I'm like, are we sharing bathrooms? And they were like, no, let me show you your room. And so it's like this amazing room, like this private bathroom, this jacuzzi tub. I was like, okay, Alcoholics Anonymous, So I highly recommend Lumber Baron. So there you go. My sobriety date is August 16th, 1995. It's the only date I've ever had. And that means for the past 28 years, I've remained willing to surrender behaviors and beliefs that would not support me staying here continuously. That's the biggest word I know, next to sober, continuously. Other than being alive, the only thing I've ever done that long is to be alive and to be sober. Everything else has been super sketchy. Am I right? Yeah. So I get sober. Now, here's the funny thing. It's a little warm, and I'm in menopause. So, like, that combination, it's a lot. It's a lot happening right now. So anyway, just want to get clear because I feel close to you and I could share that. Oh, you know what, sidebar. So I remember I was working for this company and we were in a meeting. You're in corporate America, it's always like meetings. I don't know what we ever really talk about. We're in a meeting. And so I think they thought, the team that I was on, they thought I was younger than I was. And so we were in this meeting and I start sweating profusely. And so I was like, is it hot in here? And everyone else is like, wearing parkas, you know what I mean? And all these big coats. And they're younger and they're like, no, are you okay? And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? I was gonna say I'm in menopause, but I'm not trying to give it all away. So anyway, where was I? Oh, so when I got sober, I was 96 pounds. And I'm not 96 today. That's why I'm wearing something loose and flowing and cute. And so I was 96 pounds because I had a diet of air. And so I would drink and enhance my drinking for days on end, like 8, 9 days at a time. Yeah, I was hyper-focused. And I was missing my front tooth when I got sober. Quick story. I shared an opinion. It wasn't supported. That's what happened. But I didn't stop talking. You know why? Because I never stopped talking, huh? And when I got sober, I was bald-headed, right? So let's complete the picture. I was bald-headed because when I drank, I found that there were things that moved into my hair. They were super rude, super disruptive. So I told my friend, and by friend I mean someone I just met but felt very close to. So I told my bestie, there's something in my hair, and she leaned back, completely alarmed, and she's like, how do you know? And I said, because while we were talking, they ran from this side to that side. So she got serious, she understood the assignment, and she leaned in. You know it's about to be good when they lean in. So she leaned in, and she said, you know, in her drunken infinite wisdom, rubbing alcohol will sterilize anything. I was like, thank you, right? And so I remember getting a bottle of rubbing alcohol because there's this sage advice clearly had been given to me from Yoda herself. And so before I took any action, and this is so exciting, I wasn't even in AA. I was several years away from coming to AA, but I was already practicing the traditions. Tradition 2. We took a group conscience. Before I took any action, I set them all down. Yeah, true story. I set them down and I said, look, I know you're up there, okay? I know you're up there. You can stay, but I'm going to sterilize you, yeah? And so I would pour rubbing alcohol all over my hair. And in the beginning, so we always grasp to the beginning when it's horrible at the end. You know what I mean? That's why you stay in horrible relationships. We used to be good. Yes, suck now. So when I first started doing it, it was very soothing, like a meditation of sorts. It was just like refreshing. That rubbing alcohol would hit my scalp, and there was like a renewal, okay? It was a renewal. And then after a while, they just started getting really ornery and just combative. And I was like, oh, is that what we're doing? So I took a pair of scissors, and I cut off all my hair. But newcomers, half measures avail us nothing. So I took a shaver, okay, because I like to be thorough, and I shaved all the hair off, so I was giving you scalp. I was featuring scalp, yeah. And I would wear T-shirts on my head as if they were fashionable turbans, making my own statement. And so I share this with you because I didn't get sober because I came to you bald-headed, toothless, and 96 pounds. That look was not on trend, believe it or not. But I didn't get sober because of that. When you drink like I drink, when you are in a committed relationship, you need to be committed to the relationship. And that means wherever it goes is where we're going to go. When I first started, I had no idea that I didn't start. I was 28 years old when I got sober, and I'm 28 years sober now. I looked older then I look older then than I do now. There we go. I was like, what are you saying? Okay, yes. So I always say that Alcoholics Anonymous is a fountain of youth. When I came to you, I was sunken, shriveled, and super tired. And I came in under the lash of shame. So not just alcohol, under the lash of a great deal of shame. And it's so important because we don't talk about that enough. That when we get sober, we have to deal with all the people we became as Atu said it beautifully. You said it beautifully. When I think of step 6, right, it separates the willing from the defiant. What do I want to be called, right? It says so that we can be, what do I want to be called? How do I want to show up? Step 6 are the areas that I lack faith, and when I lack faith, then I take actions to overcompensate because it's a natural instinct that far exceeds its intended purpose. I have to be careful who I'm talking to because sometimes, they are well-meaning individuals, but they don't quite understand what we're doing here, right? So if someone says, when I get angry because I'm human, oh, you must not be working a program. Shut up, sit down, right? So that is not the definition of step 6. If I hit you, though that's a defect of character, right? Do you understand where I'm going with it? You know what I mean. Don't judge me like that. So I get sober and I'm exhausted. How is this possible when I was in a relationship with alcohol that I thought I would have? I loved drinking. I'm not here because I hate drinking. I'm here because I have acknowledged that the relationship is over. It won't work. It's abusive. I was in an abusive relationship because in step 1 in the 12 and 12 it says under the lash of alcohol. Under the lash. That means I'm getting my butt kicked. That I'm driven to AA. So I'm not even calling the shots. It's not a partnership. It's not reciprocal. A partnership is reciprocal. It is a dictatorship. It is telling me this is what we're going to do, this is how long we're going to do it, and this is when we will resume doing it. Get with it. And so I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, that space of grace. I don't think I'm going to stay. I don't even know what this is. I came via a rehab, and I'm so grateful. Tradition 6, we are not affiliated. It doesn't matter if they have a 12-step model. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a rehab is a business all day and all night. That said, I am grateful that I went through a rehab because I was on the streets. I was homeless, not really. I lived in a car. And so let me tell you about my recent home right before I came to you. So I was minding my own business, circling the block, trying to drum up some business, if you understand what I mean. And I see this car on this huge vacant lot. And so I go around again, like a couple of days. And so I was like, oh, home, right? And so I move in, and then the day after, this guy comes back, and he's like, this is my car. So I was like, okay, wait, is it your car, or did you move in this car, right? I need to know what works, because squatters have rights, I get it. And so he was like, well, I found it first. Okay, I respect that, but I'm here and I'm not leaving. And so I wanted the back seat. Here's the thing with guys. I mean, obviously you're gonna write about me. You're clearly about to get a resentment. I get it, and you should. So you have to always make them think it's their idea. You know what I mean? It's like, so I wanted, and I mean that in a loving, nurturing way. And so I wanted the back seat because the front seat has a steering wheel. Well, why would I want to sleep in the front when half my house is like obstructed? So I told him, I said, well, you haven't been here for 2 days and I want the front. I never wanted the front. And he's like, no, I want the front. I'm like, well, no. And he goes, no, you have to take the back. I'm okay. Anyway, so, and then one day, both of us came back and the car was gone. Someone had towed it, But the small victories, you got to savor them. So in more about alcoholism, it says, right, most of us have been unwilling what? To admit that we can't do it anymore. I always think about, I sponsor a woman who still has the obsession. And I love that she trusts me enough to be honest with me, right? And I just got her, and so I like to use a lot of metaphors. My relationship with alcohol, if I don't get into the center of Alcoholics Anonymous, here's how it looks. So I come in and I'm like, I love AA, this is my relationship, and AA is great, and I love being sober, but then I see my ex, the bottle, right? So I see my ex, and it's looking good. You know what I mean? Like sexy, and I'm like, oh, but I don't want to go back. It was horrible, right? And then you know how the ex is, they text you. hey, how you doing, right? And so I'm like, it's okay because I'm over it. I mean, I can respond. I don't need to block them, right? You know how we are. I don't need to block them. So you're like, I'm okay, right? It's totally harmless. And then, you know how the ex is, you were looking really good. So I was like, you were looking really good too. You want to have coffee? I mean, it's just coffee, right? And then what happens in between that space and me going back to the bottle, what I start doing is I start recalling all the times that were good. I start romanticizing a lie. I start telling myself, in the beginning, we had good times together. And so I start to buy the lie and try to recapture days past, right? But it talks about it in the doctor's opinion, I give in and then I emerge remorseful with a firm resolution not to do this again. But I'm going to do it over and over and over unless I have a psychic change, unless I surrender. And so I have to be willing to acknowledge, how is that showing up in my life? What is the whiskey in my milk? What is the thing that I'm saying, this is so small, I mean, it doesn't even matter, but it's the thing that'll take me out. When I was little, my grandmother loved me and I loved her, and she was my everything, and I slept next to her at night because I was terrified of the dark. And I remember I would watch her as she slept because I loved her obsessively. I just knew that if she died, I was like, she's already old and she's probably gonna die any minute. She's probably as old as I am now. Sorry, but I'm not ready to go, just affirm that. And so I would watch her breathe, and I told my child self that if I paced my breathing to match her breathing, if she died, I would die at the same time. I didn't know it didn't work like that. And so her inhale, my inhale, her exhale, my exhale. I did that every night until I fell asleep. That's how much I loved her. I know that she loved me. I am as sure of it as I am my breath. I also know that she parented in a way that was totally suspect, right? So I look back, and I was 9 years old, and I remember her saying things like, if you're gonna lay down, get paid for it. I'm 9. Do you know what I mean? And so I would say, okay, but I have no idea what she's talking about because I'm 9. And here's what I learned. When you say, I love you to me, I don't question anything after that. And that's really dangerous. Then there's my mom. So my mother gave birth to me when she was 17. That means she's 16 years old pregnant. She's not emotionally, mentally, spiritually developed. She's not equipped to have a child and parent that child in a healthy way. It's just not gonna happen. My mother is hardcore violent. As violent as you can think of, I want you to add 10 times to that. My mom has very big boobs. I don't share that with you to give you the contrast. I share that with you because she believes in packing her gun, her pistol, in her bosom, okay? And now here's sidebar. I've noticed that big boob women pack a lot of things in their boobs. Have you noticed that? I'm telling you, it's the little things you just start paying attention to. You're talking randomly. You're like, oh, my hair is falling. I need a bobby pin. You need a bobby pin. You know what I mean? It's like a treasure chest. Anyway, so my mom, if you had a disagreement with her, and you're always going to have a disagreement with her because she's a disagreeable person. And so the gun is always going to come out, but there's 3 options, right? She's either going to shoot at you, or hit you with the butt of the gun. There's only 3. One's going to happen. And so what I learned from my mom is that if I want to be respected, I need to make myself big, and I need to demand it, and I need to be loud. I get sober, and Alcoholics Anonymous taught me that respect is not demanded, it can only be inspired. What my grandmother taught me is that I need to always look good and have someone else pick up my tab. I don't know that these are the lessons I'm learning because I am a child. But this is the behavior, this is the mindset that's demonstrated. They are my window into the world. When I start drinking, my friends are having a good time. I'm in junior high, and I want to have a good time too. I didn't understand alcoholism and where it was going to take me. I didn't in step 1 in the 12 and 12, it says that we were smitten. I love that. Like, I love the language in the Big Book and in the 12 and 12. It's just so vivid. We were smitten by an insane urge that condemned. Wait a minute. Hold on. You said that I'm condemned, but you understand what it's like to be smitten when you first meet someone? When you first meet someone, everything they do is perfect. You could meditate to the sound of their breathing, right? I mean, 6 months later, they're an idiot. You know what I mean? But hold on to those first 6 months. And so when I first get into this relationship, I'm smitten. I didn't know that I was in pain until I took my first drink and it took it away. I had no idea that I was hurting. I thought this is how life felt. And then I took a drink and it was, so I didn't put those two together, but I knew something happened and I'm gonna do this for the rest of my life. I knew that. And it says, I'm smitten by the insane urge that condemns me, not inspires. The 2 was talking about step 2. Come to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. The key word is restore, because I have many powers greater than myself. I get here under the lash of alcoholism. That's a power greater than myself, that bottle. And then as I'm sober, the power greater than myself is lust, right? Rage. There are so many, greed. And so the difference is when I have a power greater than myself, meaning I'm willing to contort who I am to get whatever this is, anytime, it's like a pig, anytime I am dependent upon something outside of me, I am in bondage. Anytime my peace is contingent on something outside of me, that is what the bondage of self looks like. And so I need a power that restores me, meaning a power that I am not afraid to go to. When we talk about being restored to sanity, I think of being restored to principled action. That's what sanity looks like for me, being restored to love, because I think love in itself is healing. I hear people that are coming from just a lot of trauma, and they say, well, love hurts. No, actually, love doesn't hurt. Betrayal hurts. Abuse hurts. Love inspires. Love renews. It expands. It is foundational. So I'm really trying to get back to the center. We had this great taco dinner before the meeting, and we were talking about some things, and the term inner child came up. So I don't use that term. I use innocence, because inner child is just, I'm trying to get to my innocence, that still small space that has never been touched. And when you live like I lived prior to coming here, I don't think there is a part of me that hasn't been touched. But that's not true. And that's why the steps are needed. Because in step 3, it says we are reborn. That means made anew. Alcoholics Anonymous, man, I tell you. So anyway, I'm drinking, I'm doing my thing, and by 14, I am in and out of foster homes, and 15, I'm on the streets of Hollywood as a runaway. And when you're a child unprotected, things happened, and those things happened. And I remember I ended up living with my godmother for a brief period. I was 15, almost 16, and when I moved with her, she's super accomplished and a graduate from one of the top universities in the country, and former journalist for the publication I ended up working for, and just a woman with a big heart, sharp, intelligent, and not prepared of what her life is going to look like when she brings a teenage alcoholic coming from hardcore trauma into it. She has no idea. She meant well, right? And so I remember that she was leaving. She had purchased a Mercedes. She had her car for just a few months, and she was leaving to attend the Black Caucus Conference in Washington, and she was going to be away for a week, and she was leaving her car in her driveway, placing her keys in the candy dish in her home. She was going to take a shuttle. And before she left, she told me something. Ooh, what was it? What did she say? I think something like, don't touch my car. I don't know. I can't really be sure. And, this is something I've learned about myself through inventory. What I learned about myself is that I operate on more of a sliding scale. So when you and I are talking and you say something, I feel I have wiggle room, yeah. But when I say something, it's law, get clear, right? because I want this to work. And so while she may have uttered such words, I know she didn't really mean it because I was going to this club in West Hollywood called The Whiskey later on that night. And how else am I supposed to get there? The bus, you know what I mean? And so that day was spent with Candace and Self, and how Self would be featured, how Self would debut, and how Self would be presented. And as I'm driving the car consumed with Self, I ran into someone else's car. Whoops. So I stood at the turning point. And I remember the guy's car I hit. You know, it is unfortunate that it took a pandemic for people to know how to give you space. I mean, honestly. When people talk to me and they're right here, I always secretly wonder, what did you not get as a child? You know what I mean? So anyway, I hit this guy's car. It was pretty bad. I will give you that. But he was so negative. He was so, Patrick, he was so hostile. I did not like his attitude. And he wasn't giving me personal space. Like, I couldn't even process what had just happened. You know, he was here and he was like all in the spittles, and it was like, okay, you're ruining my chi. I gotta go, right? And so, and he mentioned something in the way of paperwork. I don't know, it wasn't my car. I didn't have a license, so I can't help you. So I leave because that's who I am. That's how I drink, that's how I live. But I want you to respect me. So when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was always holding my head down. I felt just a cloak of shame. It didn't matter. All the clean dresses I would put on, they always felt stained. I remember they told me to get a job, and I had 4 years on the streets, and I come from the record label, and I was going into these like department stores, and I had to lie about like, where have you been for 4 years? I wanted to say jail, but I didn't think that would be appropriate. And so, I was like, basically I just lied. And so every time I walked in, I would be in a dress. But if it were like the nicer stores, I couldn't go in because I felt like there were stains on my dress. There wasn't. I was sober. Do you understand what I mean? That shame. So anyway, I was working for this label, and everything comes. You're young and cute. There's just nothing they're not going to give me. And my grandmother died. And by the time I learned that she had passed, she had already been buried. I don't recall having any emotion connected to that moment because I was so divorced from my own spirit. I was always drunk. I couldn't access my emotions. But something happened when I learned that she passed. I began looking around at my stuff, which was all defining, and it was no longer enough, and that's frightening. And so I ended up making a decision because my head told me that I was living and working in a world built on make-believe. It told me I needed to get real, but I only know how to get drunk. And so I made a decision to walk in, resign from that industry, resign from the life I have dreamt of since I was a child. We can do this again. And I remember when I ran out of my money after a few months, but then heartbreakingly, I ran out of your money. That was devastating. And so I had to make a decision because I am not a periodic, I drink, period. So I made a decision to step out there and market myself in exchange for a drink. You understand what I'm saying. I refer to this as the public relations phase of my development. And I will tell you that they wanted what I had. And they were willing to go to any length to get it. And so, nothing like repeat business, you know what I mean? And so, I'm out there and I don't take care of myself because of how I live, because this is a progressive illness. Because when I started drinking and whatever else I was doing, I was up for 24 hours, and now it's 48, now it's 4 days, and now it's 6 days, and now it's 8 days, and I'm not bathing. There are things, and I'm very open about my life, but there are things that it would not be appropriate for me to tell you from the podium. And I say that because no matter how long I'm sober, I'm never going to forget certain things. And it's been my experience, and I'm so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous, because in order to heal something, you have to go into the wound. You can't heal it from out here. That's why I'm grateful for the resentment, fear, and sex inventory to address those areas. And because I do trauma work outside of AA, I developed a shame inventory. I was out there on those streets living like a lady doesn't live. And the more desperate I became, the crazier it got. Now, I quickly want to share this with you. We were talking about it earlier. I hit a bottom. I want to talk about conduct, right? Because in More About Alcoholism, and it talks about the jaywalker, on through the years, his conduct continued. He made a lot of promises, he ran his mouth, but his actions never changed. And so when I got sober, I had a lot of beliefs that I brought into Alcoholics Anonymous. And certainly AA works, and I started changing, and I surrendered a significant amount, but I didn't surrender all of it. And in my relationships, I was showing up in a way that just had no integrity. I was a habitual cheater. Habitual. I didn't know how not to cheat. I felt like they forced me to do it, really. Anyway, so I'm no longer there, but at the time, I really felt that I had to stand. So I fell in love. 6 years sober, I fell in love. I'd never been in love before. I've been in many, many relationships, and someone always says, I love you, and because I'm a team player, you know what I mean? I would say, I love you too, right? I was also a liar. And so anyway, so we get into this relationship, and it doesn't look like I thought a relationship should look like. It was verbally and physically abusive. I participated equally in both. I started the physical violence. I would never share that before. And I remember my sponsor, Gloria Decker, she's gone now. She became worried about me because she saw how I was living. And she told me I had to leave this relationship, that I am living drunk but talking sober. And I told her I couldn't leave because this was my soulmate. How devastating, how heartbreaking that 6, 7, 8 years sober, love still looked like pain. Love still looked like disrespect. Love still looked like betrayal. Love still looked like distrust. And I remember that when it was finally over, I stopped talking to my sponsor about it because she was just unreasonable. And I remember thinking she was jealous. You know what I mean? It's like, obviously, you don't understand our passion, right? You know how you are when you're committed to being sick. You're like, well, clearly you're jealous. You know, she wasn't. It was so painful. It was so painful. It was so painful. And I remember throwing up every day because the way I'm living is in direct conflict with my spirit, because I've had a spiritual experience, and now I'm trying to go back. I'm trying to shrink to fit myself through the neck of a bottle to stay in this relationship. Alcoholism lives in arrogance, right? Secrecy, but it doesn't come out like a secret. It comes out as not your business. I need a sponsor I can tell everything to. If I can, I need to get another sponsor. I need to be willing to look bad. I remember the relationship was over. I prayed to Spirit, give me a sign. You know how we are, and we're just holding on. The last gaspers, give me a sign. Should I stay in the relationship? The police came. Ooh, not that sign, right? So it was over, and we did what anyone else would do. We got engaged. Next indicated step. And we were engaged for 6 days, but they were long days, like in dog years. And I was in so much pain, I couldn't take it. I took the ring off, and I left the relationship, and I wanted to die, but most importantly, I wanted to drink. So not how I was talking, how I was living had created a thirst. And I thought I would never love again. I was heartbroken. My sponsor was dying. She had a rare lung disease. The person I thought I would spend my life with, I had to leave. I was angry. I thought we were going to have a revised big book. See, my case really is different, right? And I thought I would never love again. So you can imagine my shock and delight when 6 days later, I was in another relationship. Boop. And yeah, because sometimes you just have to let the healing begin. And so small detail, because I know we don't judge, here. When I got into the second relationship, they were already in one. I hate when that happens, you know what I mean? That overlap is tricky. And, but I'll tell you how I felt, and this is very important. Very important. This is how I felt. I wasn't in one, so the fact that they were in one was an outside issue. And so it's dangerous, isn't it? Because I'm 1,000% serious. That relationship was more violent. Police were back in my house. I lost all the people I sponsored. And I had drinking dreams every night. I felt like I was living in hell. I felt like I did not think I was going to stay sober through it. I'm so grateful for strong sponsorship. There's a difference between a sponsor and a strong sponsor. A sponsor will say, give me a call if anything's going on, get to a meeting if you can. I don't sponsor like that. I wasn't sponsored like that. A strong sponsor, we have a discussion because I'm not a fit for everyone. We enter into an agreement. I attend X amount of meetings, I expect you to do the same. I have X amount of commitments at those meetings, I expect you to do the same. I put money in the basket because this isn't something that I take, it's something I give to. I expect you, if you are able, to do the same. We're going to go through the book, chapter by chapter, line by line. When it says to take an action, we're going to take that action. When we get to the inventory, resentment, fear, sex, and I told you I give them shame, you have 1 month, that's it, and we're going to rock and roll. And that is because I don't want to sponsor women who want to stay sick. The only thing worse than a drunk woman is a desperate, sober woman who lives without dignity. I've sponsored some of the most beautiful women in Alcoholics Anonymous. There is nothing worse than looking pretty and feeling ugly. The things I'm talking about, lipstick can't fix. When I hit that bottom, when I left that relationship, and when I left the second one, because I ended up asking that person to drink with me, and they said they would, because there's nothing they're not going to do to keep me in a relationship. Do you understand that when I drink, I hit the streets? You will never see me. It was so painful. And I remember getting a hold of my sponsor, and she said, Candace, you don't have the right to jeopardize someone else's sobriety. Stop quoting the book and start living by the principles. I said, well, what do I do? She said, get away from him, leave him alone. You know, they're so intense. And I remember ending that relationship, and people would get upset. Oh my God, I can't believe you would ask another alcoholic to get drunk. Sugar, what? How rude of me, if I'm thirsty, to not offer you a drink. Do you understand what we're talking about? Alcoholism is vicious. It is ruthless. It doesn't want me to be peaceful in my spirit. And it won't come at me straight up because I've got some time now, so it's going to have to come over the side. It's going to have to come, and you don't need to talk about that. It's all right. You need to tell them. That was a long time ago. You're different now. Have you conceded to your innermost self that your relationship is over? That's what I'm asking you right now. And if you haven't, then talk to your sponsor about it. Pray for the obsession to be removed, and at night say thank you, and then take actions that support that. I remember going back through the steps to save my sobriety, because I had to. I had to go deeper. And I remember looking at the inventory, so I'm just going to give you an example. I'm making it up. I know I've given you some information. You may think it's real, but it's not. Okay, so I am pissed off at Tiffany. What? That's column 1. What'd she do? Column 2. She keyed my car. What? She keyed your car. Now, if you have friends that are sick, they'll be like, yeah, she was acting weird. You know what I mean? You could have a murder weapon in your hand and they'll take your side. And so it's like, yeah, she keyed my car. So it affects my self-esteem. She obviously doesn't think much of me. It affects my security. She's a nut job. I don't feel safe. It affects my ambition. I wanted us to be like sisters. It affects my pocketbook. This impacts my household finances and my bills. I'm going to have to pay for it. It affects my sex relations. I don't feel sexy when my car is keyed. It affects my personal relations. I thought we were closer than that. Right? It affects my pride. What are people going to say about me? And then column 4, where was I? Selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and frightened. Let me sum it up. I slept with her partner. She found out and keyed my car. Oh! So I have to be committed. If I get here, here's the thing about AA. I don't have to think it's going to work. We don't even care what you think about it. Everyone's so impressed with their feelings. Stop talking about that. Let's take some action. I didn't think I could stay here. I didn't feel worthy, but I started taking action, and I became, come to believe. And then I did the fear inventory. Now, I do fear inventory workshops all over the globe. Because when I went back through the steps at 8.5 years, almost 9 years sober, the way I did the fear inventory was as outlined in the book. That's not how I had done it initially. Initially, I did the fear inventory. What are my fears? Why I have them? Say a prayer. That did nothing. The way it's outlined in the book, what are my fears? Why do I have them? How has self-reliance failed me? So what have I done to try and act like I didn't have this fear? What have I done to try and control and manage these fears? Those are going to be the defects. And then column 3, we let God demonstrate through us who he would have us be. So who would my higher power, I call it spirit, have me be? How would that look? What would I be doing? Because I was putting things at 9 years sober like I'm afraid I'm too broken to be loved, too damaged to be loved, too used up to be loved. 9 years sober, I had no idea I felt like this about myself. But if I weren't these things, how does a woman who's not broken act? And I started showing up like that. It took everything in me, but it changed my life. And then the sex inventory. Looking at my conduct, where have I been? Where have I aroused jealousy, suspicion, bitterness, and doubt? When I'm in low self-esteem, I do a lot of game playing. And so the security, the safety that I want, I remove from my actions. Where was I inconsiderate? When I said hello. You know what I mean? You thought we were going to be a partner. I don't even know what that means. So whom did I hurt? Are there children that are witnessing this insanity? I tell the women I sponsor when they have little kids, you don't get to bring your guys home. I know you'd like to believe that everyone is well, but that's not the case. I've seen a lot of things over the 28 years I've been here. So reading that to my sponsor and making those amends sober, a lot more difficult when I can't blame it on a substance. The amends has made me a woman. Inventory made me a member. The amends made me a woman. And so I learned when I did my ideals list, my sex ideals list, the first thing on that list is a partner I can pray with. If we can't pray together, we can't lay together. I didn't know that a woman who had come from where I came from got to even request that, and I didn't know that I didn't know. But do you know that my life changed? And then my friend Debbie D, I don't know if you guys have had Debbie here, but Debbie from Concord, honey, looks like Marilyn Monroe, and she is bad. She does not play. And it was Debbie who taught me because I was doing a lot of stuff. And she would say, Candace, you know, when I date before she got married to Kent, I would wait 90 days. I was like, what? Who does that? You know who? Women with self-esteem. What? Okay. So, and here's the thing. I didn't know that I didn't feel worthy until I started dating, and I had to ask someone, you'll have to wait for 90 days to see if we're compatible. Because I'd been sleeping with strangers all these years. It didn't matter that we knew each other from the rooms. Do we have the same value system? Do I know what my values are? When we talk about sober, we're talking about emotional sobriety. This is a transformative experience. So I was out there on those streets, and so at 9 years sober, I became a different woman. That's what I want to tell you. But I was out there on those streets, and I got pregnant because of how I live. And I just wasn't going to have the baby. It doesn't mean that I support termination, and it doesn't mean that I don't. It's a divisive topic, so I don't need to tell you where I stand on it. I will tell you that when I got sober, I stood for nothing. When I got sober, I knew how to lay down, but I stood for nothing. The steps stood me up. The steps gently take their finger, all 12, and they lift our chin so that we can look at the world in the eye. I got sober, and I wasn't going to have the baby because when I was little, there were men who came in the house, and they were fond of me in a way that's just disgusting. And I couldn't guarantee, because of who I had become on those streets, that a child in my care would be safe. And I didn't want to risk it. And I made a decision to terminate that pregnancy. At the same time that I had come to that conclusion, I found out via every newspaper, radio station, TV station, that a member of my family had done these horrible, horrible, horrific things to my little 8-year-old girl cousin and took her body apart and buried her in cement. And the person who did that is my mother. So my mother killed my 2-year-old cousin and my 8-year-old cousin years apart, same way, that's her signature. And I remember going through that pregnancy as if I were not pregnant, drinking and doing all those things. I remember months later going into labor and being frightened, being overwhelmed, feeling alone. I remember praying, asking God to help me, please, just let this baby be okay because I'm not ready. And I remember giving birth to my daughter, and she was beautiful. And I felt so ugly, so broken, so damaged, so disfigured that when I held my daughter, I just cried. And I remember she would shake, and I asked the nurse, why is she shaking? They said she's detoxing. So I have to do a lot more than get sober, wear some cute things, quote some things from the book. I've had to do a lot of work to be here. I define sobriety as I don't take anything at any time that affects me from my neck up. I don't drink near beer because I'm not near sober. I don't smoke weed with or without a doctor telling me I can. And I stabilize whatever's happening with the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is a commitment that I make, and it's a personal decision. And I say that because when you come from the background I come from, you know, my dad was a pimp. Ooh, manager. My dad was a manager. And his brothers were managers too. And so, you know, when you come from that, I had a certain set of ideals of what a woman's place is, where I fit, how I measure up. Alcoholics Anonymous says we do this work to commence shoulder to shoulder. I'm so grateful that when I got sober, you didn't say, oh my God, that's so horrible. You don't have to do what we have to do. You said you need more commitments, Candace. Who are you picking up in your car and bringing to a meeting? Where are you at with your inventory? Are you regular with your 10 steps? I am so grateful. I am so grateful that you asked more of me than I thought capable of, because that's when I grow. This is a program of divine inconvenience. It doesn't need to be convenient. I need to be stretched and reconfigured. I left my daughter when she was 3 days old. I named her Serenity because I just wanted peace. But she would never have had peace with me. By the time I got sober, I tried to find her. She had already been adopted. And I remember crying, but I didn't leave. They told me, get sober to get sober. Don't get sober to get something back. And so over the years, I started celebrating my daughter by gifting other mothers and daughters in her honor. And, you know, different years, I had different levels of success. I would do elaborate things. I would do small things. I threw parties at Chuck E. Cheese and donated all the gifts to shelters with children. I mean, I've done everything, just hoping that if she ever found me, she wouldn't be embarrassed. My daughter found me, Serenity, found me in 2020. And her name is still Serenity. And she's a mom, so I'm a grandmother. Yes, thank you, right? And so I met her mom, and I gifted her mother a God box. But I remember the second question I asked my daughter was, were you ever abused? She knew what I meant. She said, never. For that alone, I'm going to be forever grateful. You know, I have always said when I talk that my mother was going to die in prison because of what she's done. And 2.5 weeks ago, I testified against her again at her parole hearing to keep her locked up, and they have made a decision that they're going to let her out. And so I am still processing. There's a lot that goes to this, so I've had to sever some ties with members of my family, and so I am grieving. I do trauma work outside of Alcoholics Anonymous, and so I have some developed practices in shame-based grieving, and everything for me is to get back to a place of compassion. I don't understand what my mother has done. I understand that she is sick, and I know that I cannot comprehend it. But a long time ago, I had to forgive her, and I had to do a lot of work around getting there. I had to grieve her as if she was dead because I could not love you and hate her. And now that she's getting out, like all these, there's a conflict going on, and I have to get back to compassion. We will have no contact. And so I'm so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm so grateful to AA that you have taught me to stand for something, to stand for love, to stand for healing in the rooms of AA and outside. My daughter told me, and then I'll end with this, 3 months after we met, were reunited, she said, you know, I was thinking about you. I love that. And she said, I was thinking you should do something like a motivational calendar. Do you understand how tremendous that is? She knows I came from alleys, from getting loaded on Skid Row, that her grandmother's a murderer and her grandfather was a manager. She knows all of that. But because of what you've done in my life, she saw me. She saw my sponsees. She's like, you know, all these people, and you help them. And I took her to the shelter I do trauma work at, and You know what I mean? I didn't think I could ever do it. And then Spirit said, do it. I was like, I can't do that. I always say that. You always say, start here. And so I published the Serenity 2021 calendar, the Serenity 2022. So people started calling me from all over, because I've been all over. Oh my God, your daughter, you got a calendar. I'm going to buy the calendar. So now, what do I want to be called? Right? So I'm someone who does motivational calendar. Is that crazy? Is it just me, or is that nuts, right? And then I published a workbook on healing trauma. You did this. You did this. You did this. So I don't know how to say thank you, but I'm going to spend my life trying. Thank you so much.
Candace, thank you so much. We are going to close the meeting with the we version of the Serenity Prayer, if you'll all join me. God, all right, thank you everyone for joining us. Candace will be out in this hallway to greet you if you'd like to share your thanks with her. Thanks, everyone.
Tip.